You're listening to the Accordion to Me podcast with Veronique Medrano. And on this week's episode, we chat with the new king of the carne asada, the RGV's very own Arnie Segovia, aka ArnieTex. With close to 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, the barbecue enthusiast, competitor, and mentor is spreading the gospel of Mexican grilling and cooking, as well as being recently featured on the Joe Rogan podcast for the company he founded, American Pitmaster Company, or APC, a line of barbecue and grilling seasonings that are specifically made for fire. And without further ado, let's get to grilling on this week's episode of Accordion to Me. This podcast is sponsored by Cricket Wireless. I recently made the switch to Cricket, and they removed the extra hassle of staying connected and calling within the US and Mexico. And trust me, that is always an issue with every other service provider except for Cricket. Make the switch and join the Cricket Comunidad with me, Veronique. And if you think that's too good to be true, then download the Try Cricket app from the App Store to start your free trial of nationwide 5G that covers 99% of folks in the US. It's just one reason why people who come to Cricket stay with Cricket.
One trial per person, 5 people per home address. An unlocked GSM-compatible smartphone is required. Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. For 5G coverage, see cricketwireless.com/map for more details.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a huge honor. I love the name. I really do. Accordion to Me. How did you think about it? That's so cool. Oh, wait a minute. You're the interviewer, right? Not me.
You know what? You have 500,000 followers. I will allow it. Or close to it. Well, you know what? Accordion to Me really started from this desire to encompass creativity, because at the time it was the name of an album and it didn't pan out that way, and mind you, the podcast had already started. I had already started 2 episodes talking about a full album, and I was like, I need to change this. I need to figure it out. And thankfully the pandemic gave me time to figure it out. And after that, you know what, I really wanted to showcase creatives, showcase people creating and engaging in an artistic lifestyle in the different ways that art presents itself. And one of those ways, which really just blew my mind, was your YouTube channel, ArnieTex on YouTube. And I saw a few videos, and then I was like, my producer was watching some videos too, because we're like, okay, this is cool. I like it. It's like, it gives me good vibes. But then he noticed that there was a tortilleria that you featured, and they're like, that's in the Valley. So tell us a little bit about what kind of goes through the process of creating this particular channel and really showcasing your grilling.
Okay, well, we had a barbecue team. We have a barbecue team, my wife and I. And, you know, when we first started, of course, we had the whole family and friends and big parties at the cook-off or whatever, right? We would bring the hay bales and the wagons and all that stuff. And we because I was always cooking all the time, I mean, I had a little skill set. And so we did well, and we did more cook-offs, and decided that it was too much work to haul everything around. So we just decided to cook, right? And so we would just take our grilling equipment. And so that's kind of how we got started, the whole cooking thing. Of course, every Mexicano grows up with a Mexicano dad and a couple of cases of beer and carne asada, right? Barbecue, all that. So we grew up around that. I did. And so we were very successful on the barbecue trail, and
100 plus wins. Like, excuse me, super successful. That's a lot of success.
We've been doing it a long time.
Okay.
20 plus years. So anyway, fast forward, you know, I mean, I had a full-time job like everybody else. I was in the car business. I was a manager, and I was very fortunate because my boss loved for us to grill at work too.
Okay,
and,
I used to work at a car dealership.
Yes,
I can relate.
You can relate, right?
There was always like 2 or 3 people at the car dealership I used to work at, that, like, whether it was the Friday or the Saturday, because what people don't realize is that car people, if you work at a dealership, you got to work on the weekends sometimes. And like, sometimes it's slow, and sometimes you're like, you're staring off into space, and grilling just immediately like picks everybody up. The mood changes.
Yes. Everybody likes to eat, you know? and I don't mean that like that we're eat a lot. It's just like everybody enjoys a good taco, a good piece of meat, something grilled or even smoked, right? And so that was kind of how I got started. And I was fortunate, like I said, my boss was really cool. And I had 12 salespeople under me, and all of us like to fish, hunt, and barbecue.
Ooh,
so we literally barbecued for lunch 6 days a week at work.
Wow.
Every day. If it wasn't me, it was one of the other guys. So literally 6 days a week, we were barbecuing. Saturday night, I would go home. I had a big brick pit in the back of my house at the time. It was a 40 by 96 or something. It's huge. I could fit 20 briskets in there. And so then I'd go home, prepare a bunch of briskets, cook them for friends that would pick them up, or I would deliver them. So I was selling brisket on Sundays. So I was literally grilling, smoking, cooking 7 days a week.
Wow.
It's just like some weird passion. Let's call it a passion, not an obsession.
Obsession with carne.
So that's how we got started, and then the YouTube, we would just do the YouTube. I forget how we got started, but
was it during the pandemic or a little bit before?
We started before that. I think our first YouTube was in 2017, but we created this video. My son did it with his cell phones, right? Because we wanted to get into the barbecue pit masters. That's when they had just started, and it was a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And so we recorded a little video on the phone about why they should pick ArnieTex, right, and whatever. We didn't get in, but that was our first video, so my son put it on YouTube just for fun, right? Mm-hmm. And so from then on, it was just kind of sporadic. Like every once in a while, we would put a video in there, and nothing great, nothing special, recording-wise, whatever. But then, we were also cooking a lot. We were on the trail. We were cooking 35 to 43 events a year. So we were literally gone every weekend almost, Okay. When you do that for a living, we literally did it for a living. And when you're gone a lot, you miss weddings, you miss quinceañeras, you miss family get-togethers, you miss a lot of stuff, right? But we had a second family out there with all of our cooking friends and whatever. So that's kind of how it all started. And then, fast forward 2018, 2019, we started an online barbecue class. We started giving classes in person. People kept asking because we were winning a lot. And so we finally decided to go ahead and give class, Terry and I. And we were fortunate that the class sold out, and then we did it again the week after that. It sold out. And so we started to get a lot of emails and messages saying, hey, can you come to Laredo? Can you come to Houston? Can you come to Lubbock? And we're like, let me do the math. How much did we make? Yeah, we can go.
You're like, how much did we make first? Okay, we're good.
Not going to say numbers, but it was pretty lucrative. So
I mean, the thing here is that barbecue is not a cheap hobby. It's not a cheap thing to get into. No. If it's like hobby, career, whatever it is that you are in grilling, it's not a cheap thing to do.
Not at
brisket,
all. Especially nowadays.
That delicious brisket I've seen it. I've gone to the store and then I say, hola, goodbye, because it is not in my tax bracket, and I'm okay with that. But with that in mind, you're talking about 20 plus years of being on the road, but I'm really curious, what is your first memory that like of grilling that really sticks to you?
That's a good question. My first memories of being around the fire and cooking whole animals and stuff was with my father. I grew up in Pecos in West Texas, and my father was a foreman for a real big farming ranching operation. And so our house was always the get-together place, for all the people that worked on the farm and the ranch. And we were like 30 miles from any town, both ways. So there's not a whole lot to do out there except get together on the weekends and cook. And so we were fortunate because they would let my father slaughter one cow every so often, a pig, a goat. And so they would make chicharrones in the big ollas, right? And they would kill the cabrito and cook him over the coals. They would kill the cow and take it all apart. And those parties were not like we do today, where you go to 1, 2 in the morning, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to bed. Those were 3-day parties.
Oh,
they would start Friday afternoon, and they would end sometimes Monday morning when it was time to go to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
You better get that menudo for the cruda because you gotta go.
Those are old school ways of partying, It's very popular in the olden days, I think.
What's funny is you mentioned that.
Those were my first memories of being around the fire.
You mentioned that, and I immediately remember one wedding I went to in Mexico that my grandmother took me to, and they were still up. Like, there are certain parts of the world and the U.S.
Yes.
that still, to this day, celebrate that way. They celebrate more than one day.
Yes.
I want to know where y'all are at.
Me too.
We just want to know.
Me too. We'll go knock on their door, right?
I know, right? Like, hello.
What time's
The
the party?
podcast is here.
Yo te ayudo.
There's something about, like, it gets cool.
Yeah.
That first cold front, or a cold front, and the smell, like, you know, it's time.
Yes.
With that first smell, and it always to me is like either a cold front or a hurricane, because usually that's about the time we're getting like weather, cooler weather here in this area. And so, like, it immediately sparks a memory for me, that feeling, that sensation. And so, you know, you grew up with that. You grew up with that style.
Yes.
And then how did it finally come into fruition in your adult life?
You know, I got married. Terry and I got married, and my uncle was one of the Veras family in Edinburgh, Veras Meat Market. He was one of them, and he worked for them. He wasn't one of the owners, but he worked there all his life. Well, when they had the market, right, and still do. But anyway, he also made barbecue grills on the weekends. That was his hobby. So he would take little tanks, propane tanks or whatever, and he would make
he
grills.
made a grill.
He made them and sold them. And so he gave us one for our wedding gift. And so that was my first barbecue grill. So I would cook for me and Terry, and sometimes friends would come over. And that's how I got started. And then, like I said, when I was at the car dealership, well, we just barbecued all the time. And on weekends I would cook. And I like to make fun of myself or my family and my kids, because I like to say I cooked so much barbecue that I turned my kids into vegetarians. You know, they were already like, "Can we get some vegetables?" Anyway, that's how I got started. And then there was we were on vacation one year in Austin, and there was a store. It was called Barbecue Galore.
Okay.
Never heard of it, seen of it or anything, you know. And so we went in there, I bought a bunch of stuff. I was like, ooh, a bunch of cool gadgets for guys like me, right? That like to cook. And there was a magazine there. It was called the National Barbecue News. And in the back, we were sitting in the hotel, and in the back I saw they had competitions, you know, contests. And somewhere in Texas, I told my wife, look, there's other crazy people like me. I'm not the only one. They actually have competitions. So a few months later, we went to an event in Houston, and Terry and I got to judge. And as they say, the rest is history, because we're sitting there at the table, and she looks at me, she goes, your barbecue's as good as this guy's, probably better. You know? And so that's all I needed to hear.
Words. Those are fighting words, yes!
That was all I needed to hear.
Good job, good job. By the way, Terry is here. She's not on camera, but she's here. So she's in the back, but I'm pointing at her if y'all are wondering who I'm talking to.
Yeah, and so we came home. I built the trailer pit, me and my brother, and we went back to Houston and started competing. And at that time, there were not as many as you see nowadays. They're everywhere. But back then, it was either Houston, DFW, a couple in the Austin area. I used to call it the triangle, right? You had to go to Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, or Austin. That was the three areas where there was cook-offs.
And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because literally just recently I saw a video talking about the different zones of Texas, and that one of them is called the triangle. Mind you, I always thought it was the triangle. Never got it confirmed that that's what it was called.
That's what I called it.
But it's called the Texas Triangle, and the Texas Triangle is Houston, San Antonio, Austin. It's kind of right in there, because just FYI, they're all 2 hours away from each other. So if you're not aware as to why, that's the reason. It's because literally from San Antonio to Houston, 2 hours, Houston to Austin, 2 hours, Austin to San Antonio, yeah, you can say an hour, but look at the traffic. So,
yeah, that's true.
That's the truth of it.
That's
and
true.
So, you know, you're traveling, you're doing these competitions, and you know, you're doing this YouTube channel. And when did it change for you? When did you start noticing those numbers change? And you know, you're talking about the classes and all of that. Is that about the same time when these classes are going that you're seeing this number change on YouTube?
We still were not, when we were doing the classes and traveling to do classes all over Texas, we still were not really uploading much to YouTube. Everybody just knew who we were. And we were on social media, on Facebook mainly, and, you know, we would post and people would ask us to come here or there. And so we did. But in 2019, I want to say it was 19, maybe 18. I don't remember. We started talking about it. My son was in college still. And one of his things was, like I said, he grew up in the photo video industry since he was in high school. And so he decided that we should make a couple more videos, and he would upload them. It was kind of like a project for him in college. And so it kind of started that way. And then we started the online school, and it went really well. And then the pandemic came in. And so we're sitting around there like, okay, what do we do now? You know, because we can't travel. We had already stayed home a couple of years because my wife had breast cancer, and so we had took care of that first. And we were just getting back into travel mode in 2020 when the pandemic hit. And then we decided to move, so we moved from Edinburgh to McAllen to a smaller property. And so we're sitting around there like, you know, okay, everybody's cooking at home, what do you do, right? And so my son and my wife and I just kind of sat down and talked. I mean, he lives in Austin, but we would talk all the time, and he's like, Dad, you need to make your own rubs. And it was always a dream of mine, but I just never took the action, right? So Terry and I worked on our first one, which we call Wow, right? At the time, it was a steak rub originally, steak fajitas. So we called it Wow because we gave samples to everybody. And everybody that got the free sample would come back with a feedback, and I would ask, you know, what do you think? And almost 99% of everybody that had some said, it's got some kind of wow factor, you know? And so I was like, well, then we're going to call it wow. Right? And Wow steak rub, steak and fajita rub. And so that's how that started. And so we started recording more, mainly to promote the product.
Okay.
And it wasn't so much because we wanted to be YouTube people or on social media.
You just wanted to make good
we wanted to sell the rub.
about the rubs.
Yes,
okay.
That's how it really started.
Wow.
And so it kind of took off because, you know, you're sitting there every day and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do we cook next and what do we create next? And so the launch was super successful on the Wow. We very timidly ordered like $6,000 worth of product, right? And we're like, oh man, I hope it sells in like 3 months or whatever, right?
I was about to ask that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I kind of break that down for us, for people who don't understand, because there's a lot of rubs out there.
Yes, lots of them.
But this is an indie rub. This is y'all's company. This is y'all's investment.
Yes.
And so did you guys invest in it yourself, like from money that was saved?
Yes, it was just our own money that we had saved. And so...
And sourcing and stuff like that. Like, just kind of, you don't have to break everything down because there's some things are secret. Yeah. But like the things that aren't secret, you know, when it comes to putting a product like this out to the market, you know, how much did you have to go through outside of just testing it locally?
Mainly it's just a lot of cooking, you know, which we do anyway, right? But trust me, and it's like anything else. If you do it all day, every day, it gets old too, you know? So we enjoy eating other stuff besides barbecue. People don't see that, but we do because we don't record that, you know? We're normal people. But anyway, we actually did a lot of what I call test and tune, testing the product. There were certain rubs that were, in my opinion, the standard, the mark that I wanted my product to be as good as that at least, right? So that it could be well received in the marketplace. And so it took us 6 months to create Wow.
Okay.
And, you know, and then we're like, okay, how much do we buy? And the company that co-packs for us, which is Fiesta in San Antonio, Bonus Fiesta, they have minimums, you know. I mean, and that was the minimum that you could buy. So imagine how much more you can buy.
Yeah.
You know, to order.
And like you said 6,000. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
A few months.
Yeah.
We'll be good.
No, seriously, because you're like, you know, this is like, this is still a lot of money when you're a poor Mexican like we are, right?
We're like $6,000 is $6,000.
Yeah.
Y'all.
And so we had sold some stuff when we moved. I had a lot of equipment and stuff at my other house, and we had to downsize. So I sold a bunch of stuff, and that's how we had a little extra cash. So we timidly ordered, finally came through. And we were thinking like, okay, we can just sell this in 90 days. We'll be okay. We'll order some more, whatever. 4 days later, we were out in 4 days. And so it was then that we realized it's the power of the social media, right? And the online world. Because a lot of people knew who I was because of the competitions, and we had already built a following on Facebook. It was really bigger on Facebook than anything else. And so that's when we really said, okay, we need to create some videos to showcase the product. We started to get a lot of messages and emails and phone calls like, hey man, it's great on pork ribs. Hey man, it's good on pork steaks. Have you used it on chicken? I used it on a michelada. Have you tried it as a beer salt? You know, on Bloody Marys, and so I was sitting here like.
So people were doing a lot with that wow sauce.
So I was like, wow. I never thought of all of that. So the next order, we changed the label from fajita steak rub to just barbecue rub, so that it would be a little more versatile.
Okay.
Because if you see it on the shelves, you're like, it's a steak rub. No, I'm looking for a fajita rub, or I'm looking for a chicken rub. Right? Nowadays, people do that. And
that came from just the market telling you, hey,
yes. Yes.
I've used this in all these different ways and it tastes amazing.
Yes.
And so the next order that you placed was how much with the change, with the label change?
It was right around $20,000. So we had to go rob a couple of banks to be able to. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I've been in jail. No.
You know what? There has been, there's only been one bandit in the valley, and that was a fajita bandit, and it was not him.
Yeah, so I remember him.
We all remember him. If you do not know the story, look it up.
I met him.
The Edinburgh, was it the Edinburgh?
I think he was from over here somewhere.
Anyway, somewhere there is a fajita bandit. We'll put a picture somewhere, and we'll put a link to the article.
Yeah,
it's hilarious, but don't do that.
So that was just at that point, the sales gave us a little profit, right? So we had that and a little extra savings, and we just decided, okay, this is all we have, but it looks like people like it. The reason you order more is because the more you order, the less it costs.
Yes.
So you make a little extra profit by ordering a bigger volume.
Yeah.
So I don't mind sharing that because there's a lot of people that will message me, hey, how do I start mine? I don't mind helping people. People helped me. I have a lot of friends that were in the business already, and they helped me, so I don't mind helping other people.
And so like that's how, like you said, you knew somebody from Veras. There was a lot of different people, a community of people that saw what you were doing and said, you know what, let's make this grow. Let's help this person continue forward. And I
have something in my eye. Been bothering me all morning.
And so, how does it feel? You bought that first batch and then you're buying this bigger batch. And yes, with music, with CDs, and with spices, buy more, pay less.
Yeah,
so,
that's the truth.
Per piece. So that's just FYI, it's synonymous to me.
Yes.
And so you buy that 20,000. You rob a bank.
No. Actually, I robbed our bank. Our savings.
Robbed his own bank, his own savings account, and all this different stuff. And so, you've done all of that, and now you're sitting on $20,000 worth of product. And how long did it take to sell?
From there it kind of took off, and as I said earlier, we're very fortunate. It's a family business for me, Terry, and our two children. We're fortunate that Danny, our older son, who's the camera whiz, and we call him our manager, he's also very techie, very good with that. So he set up our website. We went online and had a website, and after that, the sales just kept going, and then we decided to take it to some stores here locally, and it took off really well. And then we had other stores like in Laredo and Del Rio and Eagle Pass and other places just basically messaging me saying, hey, can we get some of your product? We have a store. What's the price? Da-da-da-da-da. So we're like, okay, sure. So then we had to figure out shipping. How do you ship? And I was very fortunate, a good friend of mine, because I was looking at buying boxes and all kinds of stuff and padding and whatever. And another friend of mine from San Marcos, like I said, we have a lot of friends and everybody, barbecue is another family, they're all great people, And Richard Ansalou, I'm going to credit him with showing me or telling me over the phone how to pack and ship. And basically he said, Arnie, you don't have to buy all that stuff. I buy that stuff because he has a store. He sells products too. He sells a lot of barbecue rubs. And he goes, you don't need to buy all this stuff. Just put a bunch of tape on, put the 2 boxes together or 3, put a bunch of tape around it. That's how they send it to me. And I was like, brilliant. I hadn't thought about that.
Stuff. I should know how they pack it.
So all I had to do was buy tape, right? And then labels. So we had a copier and we just printed labels and started shipping stuff all over the place. And then we pretty much ship everything, to the individuals, priority mail, bubble wrap envelope, 90% of the time. Because it's insured, it's quick, and I feel like the post office pays more attention to it because it's priority mail, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of how the whole YouTube thing started to blow up.
Because you were promoting the rubs.
We were promoting the rubs, and then people liked our recipes, and our background is barbecue, right? I mean, that's what we did. We competed. We were one of the best. Fortunately, you know, God blessed us with a talent. And like we were saying earlier before the podcast, you know, everybody has a talent. That happened to be mine. I can't dance. I can't sing. I can't wash dishes, but but I can cook, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was my talent. But you know, brisket, as you mentioned, it's wonderful, but it's also expensive. Mm-hmm. And there's only so many ways you can
cook a
brisket, right? Mm-hmm. There's only so many ways to make pork ribs and pollo asado or even smoked chicken or whatever, right? So we just decided, you know, like, you know what? One day I was like, let's throw some of the culture food that we do, what we cook at home. I think people might be interested, some of our followers, you know, because we have a wide base of people from all over the country and some outside of the country that follow us, and because of the barbecue. So we started to post, like, you know, frijoles charros, rice, and you know,
even had your mom
and
on an episode.
I was
like,
and she's in some of those, and the people really love seeing my mom. So we try to get her on there a little bit more often as well, because they want to see her. They're always asking for her. And I'm like, Mom, hazte pa allá. This is my show. No, I'm just kidding. But she's wonderful.
You know what's interesting is you're talking about the format of the show, and something that really drew me was really the fact that in comparison to other barbecue people, you have this beautiful niche of, you know, variety.
Yes.
That allows for people to be like you said, I do not eat barbecue every day. You know, there is a variety of other things that I do, and you involve your family, and this is very much a family business.
It is.
And you, because of that, whether it's the barbecue family or your family, all of that together, it's like you're our Tío. Like I feel that, like it's like you're giving the vibes of the Tío that barbecues in the backyard. He'll share some stories, have his little bironga, and he's chill. He's the one that's chill. Like, leave me alone.
He's the one that gives you a little beer taste when you're underage, right?
Yes,
it's true.
And for me, I was like, why does it taste like skunk?
I think we all had that experience the first time.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
Was that your experience? Because I was like,
why do you drink this stuff?
Yeah, I was like, why does this taste like skunk butt? Like, what is up with you people?
Yeah.
It's hops, y'all. I can't. I get it. I know what it is. Don't come for me. I know what it is. And so you're doing all of that. You're involving the family. So what is some of the comments that you've received on YouTube that really stand out to you, or online that really have stood out to you, that kind of you keep in the back of your mind whenever you're like, oh, you know what, I'm not inspired today. Today is not an inspired day.
You have those days too. We do. I do. I mean, because we're normal people. We have a normal household, and you know, we have a dog. We got to walk him, or else he goes crazy, you know, or he gets depressed. And you know, I like to cook, not just barbecue, and not just, you know, for the camera. I like to cook, period. So I do a lot of the cooking, and Mom does the cooking. Terry cooks a little bit. And so it's funny you said the Tío, because that was one of the first things that I was like, wait a minute, I don't look 20 anymore, or what? I go look at myself. I'm like, I look like a Tío, really? But, you know, it was kind of cool, though, because it kind of, to me, tells me that, you know, people relate. And everybody does have that awesome Tío. One of mine was my Tío that gave me the barbecue grill. He was probably my favorite Tío for many years. And so it's just really cool. But people really appreciate what we do. They thank us. They send me messages. They send me emails. They ask for advice. And so those are the things that kind of inspire me and keep me going. And some people give me ideas. Some people correct me in the comments because I don't know everything, and I'm not perfect. And sometimes, you know, I learn from them, and it gives me ideas on what to do next. And it's a job. It's a full-time job now. So it's like any full-time job. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to go to work today.
You're like, I do not want to grill today. Yeah. No, it's 120.
It is 100 plus degrees right now. Like, and that's the beauty of the pellet grills, though. So this time of year, I don't mind, you know, some people get mad because pellet grills are a big thing now. I have 5 of them now, maybe 6, I don't know, pellet grills. But you can take that brisket, you can take that pork butt, you can take some ribs, whatever you want, chickens. You go put it in the grill, turn on the button, and go inside and watch a movie and just let it go.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same as cooking over a real fire or burning sticks. We call them stick burners on the offset smokers. But it's pretty damn close. I mean, and honestly, I've cooked briskets and had people try them. They don't know the difference, you know, people that eat barbecue on a regular basis. So if you do it right, they do produce really, really good barbecue.
You have been listening to the Accordion to Meat podcast, which is made possible by listeners like you rating and reviewing the podcast. Every time you leave us a review, one of your haters loses their wings and their wallet and maybe their keys. So if you love the podcast, leave us some stars and a quick blurb. And if you hate the podcast, send it to your enemies. Either way, everybody wins. Bye. So that's an interesting topic to bring up. You know, what are the different kinds of grills for different seasons that you believe, you know, given your experience, you know, what grill do you use in the spring, in the summer, in the fall? Or, well, okay, let me be real. The Valley has a weird fall. But like if there was a fall and a short fall and a really weird winter that goes into April. But yeah, so, you know, in regards to that, what are the grills for the seasons? The grill of seasons. You
know, I've had so many over the years, and I've built a few myself for me and for friends. And I'm fortunate that some of my good friends are pit builders, aka Pro Pits here in Edinburgh. And it's not really a seasonal thing for me. I think it's more of a what mood I'm in, or what is the recipe we're going to cook today. But I have had a lot of them: big ones, small ones, giant ones, big trailers, little trailers. So it just depends on what I'm going to cook, really. But I will say, like in the wintertime, when it gets real cool, like down to 80, you know, in the Valley.
For those of you who do not understand, here it does not get super cool. And if it does, the Lettermans come out.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But generally, I love cooking with open fire. So I have 4 open fire grills where, you know, that means they don't have a lid. You put the leña in there, the carbon, charcoal, whatever you're going to use, you light the fire and you just cook open fire, you know, without a lid. And that's a tricky, you know, thing that you kind of learn how to control your fire. And I love that because you smell it, you see it. It doesn't have a lid, and it just produces amazing barbecue. But if I'm going to smoke brisket, I'm probably going to use at this time my Pro Pit Torpedo, because it has the lid, has a little fire basket, and you put the logs in there, and it cooks indirect like a typical offset smoker. And sometimes, like when it's hot this time of year, I'll use my pellet grills for that. You know, and produces just as good a food, in my opinion, with the right technique. And so I'll use those. Sometimes I'm just going to cook some fajitas or a couple of steak. We are big steak lovers, fajita lovers at the house, like everybody in the Valley. It's a Weber kettle, you know, and I have a PK grill. They're smaller, and it's just, you don't have to have a lot of fire in them. So you just light it, cook what you're going to cook, close the vents, and go back inside. You're done. And those coals usually will die out real quick, so you can reuse them again later.
Oh,
you know?
nice.
Yeah. So it really depends on what I'm cooking. But in general, I'm going to say I use the open fire pits more in winter. And then I have a big fire pit, you know, the ones that are on the ground. You make big fires. I cook on those too. I've had several of those over the years. I usually burn them out during the winter time, because we like to sit outside and just grab a cold brew and, you know, put our feet up and just watch the fire, you know, and get all stinky, smell like mesquite or oak or whatever, pecan.
You know what? I there's something about, you know, the fall winter time and just sitting in front of an open fire that feels just so good. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the pyro in me from my mother or it's just in general, but there's something about it that just feels really nice. And, you know, you're talking about memories, and one of the things that really helped me when I was away from home, because I remember, like, you know, the grilling, and my mom would be the one grilling, you know, my mom
That's
was
cool.
Again, she likes fire. And so my mom would be the one grilling, and, you know, she, on top of making the sides, you know, she would take me outside, and I would be the one having to make sure, like, everything's cool, and she would come and check, and it would be a thing with me and my mother. And, you know, when I went and lived in San Antonio for some time, and it was probably the farthest I'd ever moved away from home, And I had a really hard time adjusting because it's still far. It's 4 to 5 hours away.
Yeah.
I can't go and see my mom every weekend. And so I had a friend of mine, his name's Roland, and he was out of Hondo. And Hondo's about 30, 45
Yes.
minutes away from San Antonio. And so for me, like, he would grill every other Sunday.
Nice.
Saturday or Sunday, he would grill. And so then, like, on every other paycheck, I would go to H-E-B, buy some carne, buy queso, buy stuff, and I would go to his house. He would have already bought some stuff. And like, sometimes we would make, jalapeno, not poppers. What are they? Oh my God. What are they? They're jalapeno cheese.
Bombers. Some people call them bombers. Some call them poppers.
Okay, well, those, but like not fried, like they're on the grill. And so we would make them for, like, I would buy them, and then eventually he was like, no, just buy this, this, and this. And so I remember feeling so safe and so happy. And I would send pictures to my mom, and it would, like, it just made it to where it felt good to just kind of have a little bit of something that tasted like home.
Yeah.
Because he grilled like my mom grilled. He had a little bit more variety because he had a huge grill. He didn't have like a little one.
Yeah.
But that really instilled in me the power of food to not just unlock a memory, but also to kind of salve homesickness.
I get that a lot too on the comments on all the social media. We get that a lot. Everything you just said, it's like, I get those comments, and they're like, well, I'm in California now. I'm in North Dakota. I'm in Tennessee. I'm in Austin, and I miss the Valley. I miss the way my dad or my uncles used to cook, or my grandpa or whatever. I get that really often. That's a really, really thing that again inspires me to keep doing what we do, because we get those kind of comments, and I can relate a little bit, because I grew up in Pecos, and it's not like it used to be. Now it's all oil field and just dry. And we went over there on vacation a few years back, and I was like, wow.
It changed.
Completely changed. West Texas did. So I can relate. I mean, because I kind of miss that. I wanted to go back and see my old Pecos, right? Balmorhea, Fort Davis Mountains and stuff. And we got to see all that, but it wasn't the same. So I kind of relate in that way, because there was a lot of fields and sorghum and watermelons and cantaloupe and tractors and all that kind of stuff. And now it's just all oil field and trucks and torn up roads.
Yeah.
But I can relate to that. But I do get a lot of those messages. That inspires me. That keeps me going too. It's trying to think of something good to put out. And again, like I said, we're not perfect. Sometimes we make little fumbles and mistakes. I do my due diligence and research pretty much everything before I do it. Try not to misstep or say the wrong things. But we've also learned, as I said earlier, that now I've learned even more so, that there's so many different regions and cultures in Mexico, in the world, even here in Texas and in this country that we live in. So sometimes what we call a fajita is not a fajita in different parts of the world.
Yes.
They call it something else.
Skirt steak.
Arracheras.
Yeah.
Here an arrachera is a hanger steak. That's what we call it here. But in Mexico, the arrachera is what we call the fajita here. It's the inside or the outside skirt. And then there's flap meat, which we call here sirloin fajitas. But you go west to New Mexico, Arizona, California, they call that ranchera. And you tell them, no, it's a flap steak. Oh, it's not, And for some people, and I've heard this come from different parts in the West, the carne asada is just a particular cut of meat. And if it's not that cut, like say the arrachera, then it's not carne asada. But for us, carne asada is fajitas, sausage, chicken, poppers, the whole thing is a carne asada.
To us is the barbecue.
The backyard barbecue.
Yeah, it's the backyard barbecue itself.
Yeah.
It's not so much,
one particular cut of meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's something interesting, because I was listening to an interview, that not one thing cannot represent everyone. And so you have done a really good job of kind of going right on that middle line of adequately representing yourself and your region, but at the same time making yourself accessible to everybody.
We try.
In the sense of like, okay, if this meat is not what you would call it, but you already know what it's called, then you know how to cook what I am showing you.
Yeah.
And that's super important with recipes. And so my question to you is, how do you think or go about producing something that's accessible to anyone? Like when you put out a recipe. So here's an example. I saw one recently. It was a hot Cheetos. It was a hot Cheetos chicken.
Yeah.
And so, when you make something like that, it's with the idea that everyone has access to hot Cheetos. Everyone has access to these things. Outside of your rub that they can purchase, it's still not that hard to get. So again, how do you go about producing something that's accessible to anyone?
That one right there really was not one of our recipes. Those you can buy them here at Vetta's Meat Market in Edinburgh. They make those recipes. They make a lot of different types of wings there with different flavors, and hot Cheetos was one of them. And another friend of mine, Life Through Lens, Ismael Martinez, good friend of ours and a great camera guy. He was the one that did that first, and we saw it, and we're like, oh, what a cool idea, right? And then that movie came out with the hot Cheetos, and so my son in Austin's like, Dad, we got to make this video, right?
And it was great timing.
And it was, and so we did that, and true story, we never saw the movie before we recorded that. My wife and I had never seen it, but apparently a lot of people had, and they loved it. And so fast forward like a month after that video came out, one of the meat markets that sells our products outside of the valley, called me to order, and he's like, man, I love that movie, this, that, the other, and it was so great. It's one of our top 5 all-time movies. And I was like, man, dude, I haven't seen the movie yet. I was like embarrassed to say it, right? But I hadn't seen the movie. So finally, I can say now, 2 weeks ago, we saw the movie.
Okay.
And it was a great movie. Very
That's
entertaining.
wonderful.
Very informative too. But to answer the question a little more properly, how do we go about it? I mean, I research and I write stuff down. We test things.
Okay.
I didn't create adobos. I didn't create marinades.
No.
I do my research and I see what's popular. And because of my experience, I guess, cooking, I'll say, okay, well, I like this. And I know I've used this one in competition. This we didn't care for. And in competition, it's all about that one bite flavor.
That right there. I was about to say, I'm like, wow, it's the competition.
Yeah.
The competition mindset of what goes to competition.
Yes.
And it's like, it can't be so unique that some other person who's tasting it can't try to recreate it, because I feel like there's a sense of like almost, camaraderie in regards to like, oh, if I try something, I want to try to make it at home, maybe make it better, but still, like, you guys have that mentality.
That's part of it. That's a real big part of it, and it's just the experience. And we also had a restaurant for a couple of years, so I learned a lot from the cooks there too, and about Mexican food that I didn't know before. And so you take it all together, and so I'm just going to kind of sum it all up and say it's probably more just experience and knowing what judges liked in competition, and knowing that sometimes even simple food is the best food, because in competition now it's gotten really crazy where you inject, you marinate, you soak, you do all these crazy things. So everything's designed for one bite. The judge gets one bite, so you have to impress them in that one bite. So some of that in the back of my head is always like when I'm assembling my ingredients, and again, they're not always original. Some of it, my recipes are original to me, but the ingredients are not. I mean, we have the past, we have books, we have a lot of online stuff, and I'll just put stuff together and I'll test it, and I'll say, okay, well, I know this is too much. Like, I'll give you an example. I made a salsa the other day, and I had looked at several recipes similar to what I had in mind, and one of them, used like, I'm going to say like 3 tomatillos and 2 tomatoes and so many árbol and so many serranos and whatever, and a tablespoon of comino. And I'm like, a tablespoon of comino? Wow, that's a lot of comino in the small amount of tomatoes and tomatillos that were in that. And it's like, it's half a blender. I'm like, comino's really, really strong. So I backed it down to, I think, half a teaspoon.
Okay.
And we tested it and we liked it, and it was perfect. And I've never been a comino person in my salsas, but I was playing with the recipe. It worked out great, so we recorded it. And it really tasted good, too. I was like, wow, who would have thunk, So I took that salsa with me to Austin a couple weeks ago so my son could try it. And I didn't tell him what was in it or anything, but he's also a big salsa lover, and he makes them too. And so he's like, man, Dad, that salsa is really good. I can taste the usual ingredients, but there's something different about it. Oh, and the squeeze of lime, because I don't usually put it in my salsa. I put it in my taco, right?
Okay.
But that recipe also called for some lime. So I squeezed that in there. So those were the two different things from the usual salsa roja, right, that went into that recipe, and it turned out really good. So I think that video's coming out here pretty soon.
Okay.
In the next week or two, I think.
There we go.
Yeah, it was really, really good. It was an excellent salsa. And so that's kind of how I put stuff together. You know, I mean, I have probably more cookbooks than the average human being. I have a lot of cookbooks.
But I mean, it comes from this, and it kind of digs further into the fact that you are a constant learner.
Yes, you never stop learning.
And this ability of yours to learn, to see something, to engage with it, to mold it to something that, like, you already like it, but you kind of want to just add your own flavor to it. Has really created a community of people that, you know, they come to you. They come to you again. El tío de carne asada. You know, for us is it's clear that this is one of the many reasons why.
And here's another thing that we don't often put in our descriptions or in the post is the actual recipe we used. We want people to watch the video, and one of the sayings that I have constantly is, ain't no right way, ain't no wrong way. Because a lot of these recipes that sometimes people are so stuck on, like, well, that's not the way my grandpa made it, you know, and his grandpa. Well, you know, they didn't probably invent the recipe either. It's probably been around for hundreds of years, maybe even longer, right? And so a lot of things change as the years go by with different families and different restaurants, and sometimes it depends on what ingredients are available. And so my intention is not to not give the recipe, but to show you the recipe and constantly remind you that there's no right way, wrong way, but you need to kind of figure some of this out on your own, you know. And some people do get upset because we don't post an exact recipe. And they'll ask me for ingredients, well, how come this or how come that, or why didn't you use this? And I'm like, it's in the video. You didn't watch the video?
Well, it's like articles. It's like articles. It's the same thing. People will like look at the headline of an article and not read it. It's happened to me I don't know how many times.
Yes.
But something interesting that you're bringing up with that is, like, you know, the whole point of your content and the way you've structured it is that you don't add the recipe. You don't add the recipe in. I'm assuming you also don't add it, because I haven't seen it, in the description.
Sometimes we do. Depending on what it is, but most of the time we don't.
Okay.
And again, it's because cooking is not what I call a cookie cutter situation.
No, it's
you know?
not.
That's why Mom, Grandma, and their grandmas all were such great cooks, because it was a pinch of this and a dash of that, as they would say in English, right? Un poquito de aquí y un poquito de pa acá, and, you know, abuelas would be like, you know, this much salt, right?
Yes.
Or they would get the shaker, go, you know.
Yeah.
It's not a measurement, and people want exact measurements, but the only way you're going to really become a good cook is to actually do it and then kind of figure out what works for you, because I like salt. My wife likes less salt. My mom likes a lot more than I do, you know, so I like a little bit of comino in my rice. Some people like a lot. Some people like tomatoes in their rice, some don't. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just, you need to figure some of this out by doing it. Mm-hmm. And yes, you're gonna burn the rice a couple of times. I've done it. My wife's done it. My mom done it. You know, my mom still does it sometimes.
I'm like, I've done it multiple times. So I now own a rice cooker. So.
But that's how you learn. Like our rice video, you know, which there's a story behind that.
I love that one. I love that
I'll tell you the story behind that shortly. But I get comments on that one. Sometimes people say, well, my rice came out mushy. How come it didn't turn out right? And it's too salty, or, you know, it was not enough this or that. And I'm like, your pan's different. Your stove's different. Your mano, your hand is different from mine or my mom's or my wife's or my abuela's. So you have to cook a few times to learn it. And that is our #1 performing video with over 2 million views. And here's the story behind it. We were actually recording the charro beans. And of course, we all like beans and rice, right?
Yes.
In our culture, that's a meal by itself.
That is the
Especially
staple.
with a corn tortilla and a salsa, right? No, just shut up, como dicen.
I'm like, so excited.
So anyway, we were recording. I was waiting for the beans to cook. So I went and grabbed my mom. I said, Mom, make us some rice, because she makes amazing rice. And she's like, okay. And so we're standing there, you know, waiting for the beans to, and I'm like, well, I have my cameras here. I'm just going to go ahead and record Mom making the rice video, and we'll just make a little short whatever, right? Just so people can see how to cook rice. So we recorded it. Of course, you know, it wasn't really all tripod and stuff. It was kind of handheld. So it wasn't the best. And that's where the magic of editing comes in, right? But it wasn't the best recording. So I gave it to my son. I said, make a video with this. You know, this is when we were barely starting to do a little more work on recording and YouTube and stuff. And my son's like, nah, Dad, nobody wants to learn about rice. I mean, you're a barbecue guy, you know, forget that, you know? And I was like, just make it, right? And put it together.
Just do what I said.
He goes, it's a horrible recording. I was like, you're an editor.
Make magic.
It took him 6 to 8 months. I forget exactly, right?
Wow.
But it took him a long time to finally put it together. We looked at it. We're like, okay, tweak it here and there. He finally finished it, and we put it out there, and it just like took off. It went crazy.
Because they're really, I mean, again, it goes back to what you said. Sometimes the simplest things are the most impactful things. And what is the most simple things that at least us in you know, Mexican culture think, pues está bien fácil, it shouldn't be that hard. I'm going to say it right now. Beans, rice, tortillas.
Yeah, buddy.
Tortillas, they look so simple. They're not. I've made mine look like Texas. My grandma made fun of me. There's a whole video online about it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, those are three. Those three alone. I know there's probably two other ones. A guacamole.
Yes.
No guacamole is created equal.
That's the truth.
And I'm thinking of a fifth one. I'm trying to think of another one.
The pico de gallo is not exact either.
The salsas.
And
that's
the salsas.
true. Salsas. They look simple. They're not. So those are 5 things that within easily.
Yes.
That
easy.
look easy. But once you put your hand to it, suddenly you could come out with something crazy or something good. Early in 2020, I was in an accident, and the consequences I was living with afterwards was a lot to handle all at once. So if you're like me and trying to recover while trying not to lose your car, lose work and therefore money, and super injured, and have a huge growing stack of hospital bills to pay, then you need a professional to get the care you need. In case of an accident, you need a lawyer to protect your rights and your wallet. And honestly, you don't have to look any further than that simple phrase by going to incaseofanaccident.com or encasodeaccidente.com for a free consultation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if the person who suffered the accident wasn't you, but maybe it was your tia, your abuelita, or your second cousin twice removed, don't worry. Everyone at incaseofanaccident.com or encasodeaccidente.com can speak Spanish, hablan español, and they can take text messages on WhatsApp at 888-990-0911. Don't forget to tell them that Veronique Medrano from Accordion to Me sent you. You don't want the vibes to end? Accordion to Me, you're in luck because I'm the advertiser. You hear that? Go listen to my music on your favorite streaming platform by searching Veronique Medrano. The songs that you need to add to your playlist right now are Mezcal Maria featuring Beatriz Gonzalez and my new Spanish Tejano country tune, Que Hueva, that recently won Nashville's Music Row magazine's Discovery Award. Also, if you're wanting to sport some merch, we'll be launching pod and music merch on my website, www.veroniquemedrano.com. New merch will go each month, so hurry while it lasts and get some matching merch for you and your mom. You know, she wants some new swag? Boop, boop. This has been your paid ad read. Boop, boop.
And you used the word accessible a while ago, and I'm going to refer back to that rice video because we used powders instead of the molcajete, right?
Yes.
Most of the time, my grandma and mom make it with the molcajete when we have a carne asada or family together. They do that. But when we were catering a lot, we had to find a solution to make bigger batches.
Yes.
And, you know, a little molcajete, you're not going to make rice for 100 or 200 people. We've done caterings up to 600 people. You're not going to get it with a molcajete. So my mom actually developed that ratio of a teaspoon of onion powder and whatever it is of garlic and so much comino. That's how she came up with that recipe. And that made it also very accessible to everybody because not everybody had a molcajete, especially outside of Texas. Down here, South Texas, along the border, all the way to the West Coast, that's a very common thing.
Yeah, like any southwest
Everybody's abuela has
border
molcajetes.
regions have access to molcajetes.
Yes.
But once you move past that area, those areas, and you go from here up Suddenly,
they don't even know what it is.
Or if they do,
it's not like you can go buy it at the grocery store.
No, or if
a
they
Dillard's.
do, for some reason, it's like an ornament.
Yes,
like
yes, that's true.
Like it's ornamental, so you can't even use it for what it's actually meant to be used
plastic.
for. Yes, or it's plastic.
For show.
Yes.
Ornamental, like you said. And so that made that rice video very accessible to everybody. And I think that's one of the reasons it was so successful. It's our #1 performing video. The one that we thought, or my son thought, was like, hombre, nobody wants to see that.
So question, is there desserts in the future?
Yes, that is always something that we would like to get into. We do Dutch oven cooking too. Not as much as I would like to. We used to do it a lot more when I first got into cooking outdoors a lot. I have a lot of Dutch ovens, and I sold a bunch of them a while back when we moved, but I regret that. But anyway, I still have a lot anyway. But I love cooking on Dutch ovens on the open fire too. We just don't do it as often. We kind of got away from traditional cooking, backyard cooking, when we got into the competition world. And so our whole cooking style and cooking technique changed when we started doing competitions. We didn't have time because we were always on the road. And to be successful at anything, you know, and I tell people this all the time in our classes, you have to do it often. You have to practice. You know, race car drivers, motorcycle drivers, any sport, basketball, football, you have to practice. Boxing, you have to practice. Test, practice. Cooking's no different in the competition world. You have to test a lot of different ingredients, a lot of different recipes. You have to eat a lot of different recipes that you make to come out with a flavor that you think, I think the judges are gonna like that, right? And I've told the story like 1,000 times, so I'll tell it 1,000 more, you know.
1,001. Here we are at 1,001.
You know, we were very successful with our brisket and our ribs when we first got to be pretty popular on the circuit and successful. And somehow our chicken had fallen off, and that kept us from winning a couple of times. So I'm like, I'm gonna figure this chicken thing out. So I literally cooked barbecue chicken every day for like a month, you know, and we would taste it. And honestly, you can only eat so much. You got to give it away to your friends, your neighbors, the family, or sometimes, you know, we had 8 dogs and they like to eat too. So they got to eat a lot of chicken.
It was El Pollo Loco in your house.
It was Pollo Loco, yes. And so I tell this to people, you know, when the dog stands up on his hind paws and he goes, can we get some dog food, Jefe? You know? You know you cooked a lot of chicken, you know? Okay. And so that's what it takes to be successful in anything. You have to practice a lot. And so that's the thing, again, like I said earlier, you get people to test stuff, to try stuff without an exact recipe. I have a lot of books. I know a lot of different recipes. I'm not a recipe follower at all. You know, I'll look at a recipe, I'll look at the ingredients, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this, this, and this, but I'm gonna change it all up. Because I know more or less what I like, right, and what I think is going to be good. And again, that comes somewhat from being in the competition world and knowing what to add or take away sometimes to make it better. I guess maybe that's the competitive nature in me. Like, I'm going to make it better. She has a cookbook, I don't, but I'm going to make it better.
There we go.
You know what I mean?
But here's the thing is that, you know, there is a sense of like, especially in the barbecue world, because in baking, in other facets of cooking, you kind of have to have some kind of semblance of a recipe to get it in your brain.
Yes.
Because if you don't add baking powder or baking soda, trust me, it ain't gonna rise.
That's right. That's true.
But outside of that, you know, in the barbecue world, it's very different because one of your main ingredients is already done. Yeah. Everything else is you. Yes. It's adding your personality. Yes. And everyone's personality is based on the rub, the sauce, all of that. Yes. And like I said, I only have this appreciation only because of just years of growing up with it and understanding it. And so and everybody thinks their tío is the best barbecue cook. You know, there's a lot of pride in cooking too. Yeah. And some tíos have their secret recipe and they're amazing and they're great cooks. And I've known a few that died with their recipe and I'm like, why? You know, why not share it with your family at least, right? You know, because it's good, you know, and so that's another reason we like to share. It's a memory.
I don't keep anything.
Yeah, it's a memory. It's a time capsule of a person, in a sense, and you get to kind of go back to it every time you have that recipe. And so, in my opinion, you having this YouTube channel and your online presence allows you to almost share it with the world, so that you know whenever the time comes, you know. other people will still be able to live in that memory of you, of their memories, of their times. It may not be exactly perfect. Like you said, they may add, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
And we encourage that.
Yeah.
I do.
And again, it goes back to that uniqueness of why you do the work you do and why the way you tackle the barbecue is very different compared to your peers online. Because your peers online, I've watched many people, they have a list, they have a recipe, it's just every single time, it's very regimented, but these people aren't that regimented when they're out in the cooking world. And if they are, that's just their nature.
Yeah.
I mean, but speaking of your unique cooking style, your rub got featured on the Joe Rogan podcast. So tell us a little bit about that moment, how you found out, and just what was all that feeling?
That was pretty awesome. First of all,
he's a meat eater.
When he ordered the rub, this was last year, like I want to say August, October, somewhere around there. Because I was doing all the orders at the time. Now Terry handles the orders, but at the time I was still doing it myself. So I was, printing the labels, and I saw the name, and I'm like, I know a Joe Rogan. I follow that guy. This can't be him, right? Because
so many. You never know. Yeah. You never know if someone randomly has the first and last name.
Yeah, it happens. But that is a very unique name. But still, I was like, so I saw the address, Austin, Texas, and I'm like, I think he's from California, or I thought he was. So I sent it to my son, and he's a big Joe Rogan fan, and he's like, Dad, that's really him. I was like, wow, because my son lives in Austin, so he kind of knows everything around there, right? And
especially the creatives. The creatives make themselves very known if they're in Austin.
Yes. So we sent him the products, and a little bit later he mentioned the OG and the company a little bit. He kind of didn't get the name right, but the fact that he did it was awesome, first of all. And a lot of people still knew it was our product, even though he didn't get the name just right. So we were just like, oh, that was cool, man, badass, right? And then that was it, right? And then last month, it happened again. But this time, he said the OG Pitmaster rub. He got it, like, spot on. And
so that means he was still using it. He was, and for anyone who, knows of Joe Rogan at all, in any sense of the word, I know him from UFC, Fear Factor, all the different stuff he's done. But there was a show that he was doing with some other guy about going and hunting.
Yes.
And, and hunting with a bow and stuff like that. And it was a very particular show. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there. But he is known as a, meat eater. He's a very big protein person.
Yes.
So, to have someone like him, hey, I want to try I want to try this kind of, seasoning. That really says a lot to the unique style, again, of that you bring to a rub and you bring to your cooking.
Yeah, and the same thing happened this time. People started sending me messages saying, hey, man, you got mentioned on Joe Rogan. And when I first saw the message the second time, I thought they were referring to the last time, right? And then I got more messages and more messages. I'm like, wait a minute. And then this guy sent me a message. He goes, here, it was on this guy's interview. He was interviewing this Mike something or other. And
at this timestamp.
Yeah. And I said, wow, cool, man. I'll go look it up. And then a minute later, he sends it to me, the actual clip, right?
Nah, he wasn't going to wait. He says, you need to see it now.
Yeah. And so I sent it to my son. And since he's the big creative mind behind a lot of what we do, he put that little reel together and we put it out there. And honestly, thank you, Joe Rogan. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it again. Thank you, because you mentioned us, and it did really boost this month's sales, July. It was just we just had nonstop sales for 2 weeks. It was incredible. It really was. And
it goes back to people who love food, that kind of food, the barbecue, the meat. You're going to appreciate, that. And so my question, though, is because we were talking about the evil vegetarian. I mean, all jokes aside, but vegetarianism, and have people messaged you about trying your rubs on vegetarian dishes?
There are a lot of people that buy them, even though they are vegetarians. We do see some of those comments sometimes. They generally, that type of personality, which I don't judge because, like I said earlier, my kids were vegetarians and vegan for a while. And I know everybody's different. That's the big thing that I think the world lacks, a little more open-minded consideration and love for each other. We're all different. We come from different backgrounds. different families, different cultures, different regions. But a lot of people buy the OG because the WOW has a little bit of MSG in it. And MSG is a natural ingredient. I did a lot of research and hemmed and hawed about using it or not, but it was very big in the competition world. And a lot of people eat it and don't even know they're eating it, and they don't like it, but they eat it anyway, and they don't really know it. So anyway, because of that, like some people don't order it, but the OG actually kind of this last few months, this year has kind of kept up with the WOW, which is our flagship product, and the OG actually outsells it a little bit sometimes, a lot of times, this month for sure, thanks to Joe Rogan. But anyway, so the OG is just a real simple salt, pepper, garlic that we used in our house forever before. And when I started blending that one, it didn't have fillers or additives or nothing, because I mean, we use it at home, right? And I just mix it and we'd use it. So I sent that one out to get packaged, and the co-packer asked, do we put some of the additives and the fillers and the preservative, whatever it is? I said, no, man, just salt, pepper, garlic. I don't want nothing else in there. So that's the way they packed it for me, and it's been a huge, huge, huge hit. It's good for everybody. And here's something interesting. When I was doing the research, again, I research everything. When I was doing the research about which salt and which pepper and which garlic to use.
Because there are different kinds.
There are a lot of different ones of all of those. But I was shocked to find out how healthy the right amount of salt is, how healthy pepper is, you know, and this is not a healthy commercial, but I was shocked to learn that pepper's good for you. I mean, we all knew garlic is good for you, like forever, right? And it keeps the vampires away. I always say that. Right? But all those three ingredients together is like a health food, sort of, you know, and I didn't even know that, and I don't promote it that way. But when I was doing that research and I learned that, I was like, this stuff is good for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And you can put it on everything, you know? And so we use it on everything. We use it on the carne asada, on the caldo, on the menudo, on the enchiladas, on the carne asada. Okay. It's just good on everything. And eggs in the morning. So, yeah, that's kind of how, you know, and you notice I tend to ramble a lot, and I might have forgot your question, but
it's okay. No, it's okay. This is one of those shows that we enjoy the long form. That's why it's a podcast.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Sometimes when I'm recording the Zoom, you know, for the camera, and she'll have to reel me back in. Wait a minute, get back. Where were you? This was the question.
Does she have hand signals? Does she have like ear?
This was the question. Get back to the question.
No, this one's rewind. This one's go forward. There we go.
That does happen. I tend to ramble a lot.
You know what? I love people that engage with their passion, and you engage with it in such a way that like I'm in it. I'm in there with you. I am down the rabbit hole of salt, pepper, and garlic. Yeah. And you mentioned MSG, and I'm like, oh my God! Wait till Uncle Roger gets to this. Yeah. You guys don't know who Uncle Roger is. He is a big proponent of MSG on YouTube. So make sure to check him out if you guys have ever seen it. Just trust me, it's hilarious.
I mean, I encourage people to go do their own research. I mean, when I did the research, I honestly looked at tons of videos on YouTube. I honestly didn't find a single one that really attacked the MSG or some of the other ingredients that are in our WOW. And so I'm like, okay, this is all good. And I mean, I used it already a lot of times before that, especially in competition. And it's in a lot, probably 80% of the rubs out there in the market.
Really?
People just don't know it.
Wow.
And I'll share this story with you guys that I just heard a couple of weeks ago from our co-packer. They were in a grocery store, and this lady apparently knew who they were and recognized him, and she was kind of yelling at him because they had MSG in some of their rubs and getting really mad at him. She was screaming and yelling at him. She said, you guys are evil because you have MSG in your cart and your products and blah, blah, blah. And it's unhealthy and it's killing babies and this, that.
What?
Literally, this is the story he was telling me. And so the man was just like, they're listening to her. The manager of the store came out. Some of the employees like, what's going on? Why is this lady yelling at this man? Da, da, da. He just like sat there, you know, and let her finish. And
because sometimes you just gotta let them blow steam, then because if you're not reacting to it,
yes,
they're just kind of like stop breathing.
Yeah, you're not feeding their fire. So he waited till she got done, and while she was talking, he noticed that she had 3 shakers of what's it called? Of accent. in her cart. And he goes, ma'am, I noticed you have 3. Oh, the manager of the store was there too. And so the man said, I noticed you have 3 shakers of accent in your cart there. And so she goes, oh, yes, it's the most wonderful thing. This thing, me and my family, we share it with everybody. This is what you should be putting in your spices. This stuff is really good. Da, 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 da. The manager that was standing there picked up one of them and looked at the back, and he showed it to the lady. And he said, ma'am, have you ever read the back of this shaker? It's 100% MST. And she was like, oh, my God. She got so mad. She just left the cart, grabbed her purse, and left the store.
I mean, what do you say?
She was embarrassed.
I mean, yeah, good. Be embarrassed, fool.
But that was just so funny because she was so anti, and yet she had been consuming it all this time without even knowing, without ever reading the ingredients. And that's where I think a lot of people sometimes, they heard something, and so it's bad because somebody said it, but without doing the research. So
and a lot of the
I'd like to
things
encourage
now,
people to research.
Research is so vital and important. And how many hours do you think, just off the top of your head, do you do research before every episode, or just in regards to the recipes and production of them?
I don't really have a set number of hours per recipe because it depends on what it is. Some of it, I just kind of have it, but I do spend quite a bit of time online. My downtime is like from 9:30 to 11 o'clock midnight, and I'll get online, and that's literally almost every single day.
Okay.
That's my downtime, and I'll go to bed at 11:30 or midnight. And it's not all research. Sometimes I'm watching dirt bikes or adventure bikes or ancient aliens or,
Aliens.
I like to watch a lot of other YouTube content creators, not just cooking, but just other people that talk about different things. I'm a learner, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
I love to listen to a lot of different things.
You can tell you're a voracious learner.
I listen to a lot of different things, and just everything, edifies you in one way or another. I like ancient history. I like to watch videos about history and civilizations and things like that. Not because of the alien thing, just because to me it's fascinating, because they're unearthing civilizations that are 100,000, 200,000 years old, and supposedly we've only been here at 6,000, right? But they're now, thanks to science and technology and LiDAR imaging, they're finding a lot of things that we haven't been told. I just find it fascinating.
You're tripping me out, because I literally was talking to somebody from BMI, and we had a whole conversation, literally. So we're talking about music, right? And they're like, music this, music that, music this, da, 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 da. And then, did you know that there was an ancient civilization that they found with this thing called LiDAR? And I'm like, okay. and it's just, and we went down another 2-hour
It's another rabbit hole.
Another rabbit hole, if you thought music was a rabbit hole, start off of ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
But it's just, we as people tend to need, our tank refilled.
Yes.
We need to refill the tank, whether it's with silly things or, things that fill back into the work that we're doing. Right. And so it's clear that you already have a method to the madness of creation, because it's not easy. You produce 2 shows a week, and that's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, a lot of work.
And, yourself, and again, this is a family business, so there's a lot coming into this. And so eventually you'll get into desserts. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Can't wait. But, what do you see in the near future for ArnieTex and even for the APC?
Hopefully we can continue to grow the American Pitmaster Company. Right now we're in a lot of stores in Texas, but not anywhere close to, we're still like at the tip of the iceberg of the potential. We're in a few stores outside of Texas, in Colorado, Oklahoma, Omaha, and Kansas City. And so we still have like the whole world. I have 2 more rubs that we're working on. I know there's other rub makers that have 20 or 30, and I'm like, I think in general, 5, 6 is kind of all you need for any kind of cooking, especially barbecue, because you still want that meat to shine. You want that meat to taste like meat, I like marinades. I like adobos just as much as the next guy, but I'm kind of a little more simple cook at home. I like OG, and I like WOW on some stuff, especially fajitas and steaks. It's amazing. And the 2 together makes an amazing steak. But in general,
If you guys don't think I'm going to this man's house to try some carne, y'all are wrong.
you're invited to the carne asada. I love your personality. I love everything about you so far.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
great.
Thank you.
But yeah, in general, it's just that way.
Mira, we'll invite Tim Smith.
También.
También. Tú, yo, y Tim Smith nomás ahí con la carne.
Yes. I've seen him a couple of times at a little restaurant in Edinburgh that we go to once in a while for
Oh, he's
breakfast.
such a sweetheart.
And I've kept wanting to go say hi to him, but I'm
You
like,
should.
I'm nobody.
Mira, you should tell him, mira, I was also a guest on Accordion to me, because he was a guest on the
Was
show.
he? Cool.
Yes, so see, y'all have something in common now.
Yeah, cool. Well, if I get off track, reel me back in, because
That's all
sometimes I
good.
forget what I was talking about. But
So I'm ADD squirrel. I do that all the time.
But yeah, creating 2 full-length videos per week is a full-time job. Our rubs are getting further out there, and the goal is to continue to build that. We're 60. I'll be 62 in a couple of months. Terry's 62 now. And so we're at that stage where we're like, okay, hopefully we can retire in 5 or 6 or 10 years, Si Diosito quiere, and we're still in good health, right? So we want to build that company to a point where we can have somebody run it for us, or maybe we can sell it and just buy us a big motorhome and go travel around.
There we go.
That's kind of like the dream,
Man, it would be cool to see ArnieTex on the road. ArnieTex on the road.
Well, because honestly, producing 2 a week now is it's a lot of work, way more than most people realize. It's expensive too. To do it at the level we're trying to do quality-wise with the content, we're still...
I mean, for me, I think you're up there with Babish.
Yeah.
Like Babish cooking is a huge thing. There's a few, Uncle Roger's another one. There's so many, there's Rick, I don't know what his last name is. I'm so sorry, Rick, but he's online. And so, the level and the quality of stuff that you're doing is up there with some of the biggest creators out there.
Appreciate that.
In my opinion, and the quality. And so if you're wondering, no, I mean, I think you're really up there, but I know it's really difficult, especially for an indie project. Some of these other projects have a lot of funding and a lot of teams and a huge thing.
Yes. And even then, thank you for that. Appreciate that. And we do get those comments, but even then, and maybe it's that competitive nature where we still want to step it up even better.
Of course.
And so we've bought a lot of lighting and good cameras, and I'm dreaming about some more even better cameras now, but I'm like, I think I'm going to keep the money in the bank because we're trying to develop 2 more rubs, right? So that's expensive to buy, because they don't front that, and we try not to use credit cards, and stuff. So we try to buy everything and pay for it so that we can keep going. Yeah.
And does the YouTube money help?
Oh yes, absolutely.
I mean, you have 2 million and it's still growing, but like there's other videos that have a lot of views. And so you're at a level, I mean, you're close to 500,000 subscribers.
Yes.
That's not a small feat.
And that was another side benefit to creating the videos. We never started doing videos with the intention of getting paid. It was to create content to promote American Pitmaster Company. And then all of a sudden, some random guy, because I was always doing research on cameras because I'm trying to get better with the cameras. My kids used to do the recording. They used to live here too. They moved away. I had to buy cameras and learn how to use them. So I would spend a lot of time researching and reading and trying to understand how they work and how to get better and stuff like that. So some random dude that creates content in Florida, fishing content and stuff, somehow I saw his videos and I messaged him and we went back and forth. We had a couple of phone conversations and he was like, "Are you getting paid yet?" And I was like, "No, was I supposed to get paid?"
You're like, is there a check waiting for me somewhere that I don't know about?
And we were very, very small at the time, still, this was like 2018. And he goes, "Dude, you need to do this." And so I told my son, because he's my techie guy, he goes, "Nah, Dad, they just pay pennies, man. Don't worry about it. They only pay pennies." And I go, "Well, we got to start somewhere. So here's all the information. Put it on there anyway."
Get me my pennies.
Yes.
Get me my 5 pennies. I would like to rub them together.
Yes. And so he did all that for us. And I want to say at least another year and a half or 2 go by, we started to grow a little bit more, and all of a sudden, a little bit started to show up, and then this whole social media thing has blown up, not just YouTube, but now because every platform wants you to spend time on their platform more than on the other platform.
So they'll pay you money.
So they all started to pay a little bit, right? And I'll say it, TikTok's the least paying, just so y'all know. But it's the biggest platform. I think we have the most followers on there. So you still have to pay attention to it.
It's It's kind of one of the biggest reasons why I know a bunch of people tell me like, oh, we want you on TikTok. You should be singing on TikTok. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Yes. I'm like, I can barely handle putting together a record. And you want me to do what?
It's true. It's
like
work.
there's a lot. And you were talking about how much time and hours, like it's not like, let's even break it down further. There's not just the 2 episodes you produce. You also produce the short content that's not always coming out of the main videos.
Correct.
So you're doing.
So we're doing reels.
So technically, you're almost doing 4 pieces a week.
At least. And to give you guys an understanding on how that all works, like you can take a whole long form video, as you mentioned, and cut it into smaller videos. And a lot of people even now still don't understand that short form reel content. They're like, but where's the whole recipe? Where's the whole video? And literally, we posted it 2 days ago. It's all there, but people don't understand, number one. Number two, like Facebook especially, doesn't show everybody everything. They just show them the reels. And somebody may not be following us and not know that there's a whole video there. But anyway, Facebook got into the paying game because they wanted you to be on their platform. So they started paying a little bit for reels. And now YouTube is creating shorts because they want to take some of the TikTok and Facebook reels money and the Instagram. And so we're fortunate now that we grew to a point where we get a little bit from everybody, and then the rub business pays a little bit. So we're in a very good place. We're not, I like to say, we're not getting rich. We're not, making tons and tons of money, but that is the dream. Hopefully people like our products and our content enough that we can get a little bit bigger. And hopefully it's enough that fortunately we're debt free. We used to have a couple of acres in Edinburgh when we moved, and so we sold that. And that's really kind of what gave us our jump start. We say we had a little savings, but it was because of that.
Nice.
So
that must have been a hard decision.
It was tough and much regretted sometimes.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I mean, I have a bunch of friends that lived in Edinburgh. Some of them sold property, and they're like, should I have? But given how Edinburgh's growing,
yes,
it'll eventually eat that way. So it's like, will you, won't you? It's never perfect. It's never a perfect science. But these things, all these decisions that you made led you to this point of being very independent. You run your own schedule. Like if for some reason you don't feel good one day, you can say, hey, you know what? I'm not doing too hot. I'm gonna stop.
Yes.
And anyone else in any other situation, wouldn't have those luxuries because they work for someone else.
Right.
But it comes with the sacrifice.
It does. And some of that is I'll say this because I'm very fortunate, so I've got to give credit where credit's due. My wife has put up with me, over the years. I've done a lot of other crazy things, multi-level marketing, insurance sales and technical sales. Did a lot of things when I was younger that I thought I was going to make a lot of money and didn't. And so we've been successful, made money in sales.
As a salesperson.
Lost a lot, made some, lost it. We've been up and down a bunch of times. And right now we're in a good spot, but really, Terry is kind of my what do you call it? She keeps me in line too. She keeps me straight, reminds me of everything, makes sure that, I have powder and my face is clean and my hair's combed, things like that. She reminds me. And so all those little things really help. My kids are involved in the business. We're fortunate. And that's one of the reasons we've grown is because I have a team. Terry goes that extra mile. The sacrifices you're saying, like sometimes, business gets in the way because we have 2 distributors, and so we tend to them, and we tend to all the emails and the messages, and we're researching what we're going to do next. We're having meetings, Google and Zoom meetings with our kids, trying to figure out what's next, and did this work, did that not work? We're looking at analytics. We're doing all that stuff. So that whole teamwork comes together and is one of the reasons we've been able to grow fast. But part of that, again, coming back to that, you have to sacrifice. Sometimes Terry's washing dishes at 11 o'clock at night. That's the part people don't see. And she don't like washing dishes at 11 o'clock at night.
Let's get you an assistant. That is next on the agenda. Getting Terry an assistant for the dishes. If you would like to apply, reach out to him.
Shoot me a message.
Shoot him a message. We are getting applications. I'm just kidding. I'm not. No. Don't listen to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Arnie's son. I'm so sorry.
We are fortunate in that it's a really great team effort with the family. And the rub business has finally got to a point where it's making just enough where we can get away a little bit and pay a family member. We have 2 sisters that they will pack for us and ship orders. when we go to Austin to see my son, or if we just, want to do something else for a couple of days. We've gotten to that point now, finally. And we're close to where we can almost hire a full-time person, but we're also still working out of our house. I built a climate-controlled rub room where we keep our rubs at a certain temperature so they don't get too hot in this Texas heat, so that when it ships, it's still like fresh the way it came packed. That to me is a big difference, because rubs do get stale and lose their punch when they get hot or when they sit out. And I learned that again in the competition world. So that's a big thing for us.
But it also goes back to just understanding the business, understanding the business of the rub, and understanding the business of why it is important to understand what you're walking into. And I said it earlier, as much, there's always ups and downs. Life always has those ups and downs.
Yes, it is.
But it's so clear to see that all of the different jobs that you mentioned were all sales, including,
for the most part, yes.
Including cars. And so it's like it was honing and like massaging that skill until you got to the point that you were doing it for something that you love.
Yes.
And so just to wrap up this amazing episode, because trust me, there will be more. There will be more. Just other formats, but there will be more. What is life accordion to you?
What is life according to me? Life is good right now. I mean, honestly, we've had our down times, our low times. We've had, difficult times like everybody goes through at some point in their life. I'm going to say in 2008, we bought a restaurant. I was heavily in debt going into that. And then literally this was April. In May, all the crash happened and the housing market went crazy and all the banks were going bankrupt. And so we had a very dark time after that. We lost a lot of money, lost our home. We were one of the casualties. So there was a very dark time after that for me personally. But I always kept in mind that and some of that, I guess, is the sales experience and training. You have to be positive. You have to be optimistic. You have to think, that it's going to be okay. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And fortunately, my wife stood with me and we just kept doing things. And I had a good friend who, at the time, I didn't have a barbecue trailer to go cook in, but I had cooked before that and had a good track record. And, he was like, hey, I'm going to build a trailer. Me and you can go cook together just for fun. We'll do a couple competitions. And we went and we split it, right? And so it started again like that, the cooking. I had started cooking with him. And then, after almost a year of going, and I had been away from the competition for a couple of years, and things had changed a lot in the competition world. And so we weren't hitting as much as we did before. And so I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So, let's watch some chef forums. Before social media was a thing, it was forums. So I would look at all the cooking forums and get ideas and follow chefs and look at their recipes and what do you fuse together? What makes great flavor? How do you cook? And all these things, right? And so that's how we started to cook again. And cooking, for me, is what gave me more life and more hope. And going to these competitions and then winning. And it's like anything. When you win, it's like an elixir. It's a drug, it's a high.
Yeah.
And so you're like, I got to do this again, and so we started cooking more and more and more. And I made this homemade trailer that I had into our RV trailer, homemade, and we started to go further out, and we were successful and did really well. And then finally we got to a point where we could buy our toy hauler again. And so we finally got another toy hauler. But all of that kept us going from that little dark time. And so, my encouragement to everybody is, do your research, but follow something. Everybody has a gift. Everybody has a talent. And as I said earlier, before we were on the show, everybody has that. You need to find what you're good at and then pursue that. And everybody can dream. Everybody can chase their dream, and if you fail, get up and do it again. You got to stick to it. I did a lot of what we call PMA reading and listening to when I was young and in sales. I bought thousands of dollars worth of tapes, Positive Mental Attitude, and I read books, and so all of that came in, and when I needed it, clutch, as they say. And that helped us continue to go forward. And again, I'm fortunate because my wife just puts up with me and listens to me and does crazy things that I want to do and stands beside me. That's a big, big plus, you know, in my case. So that kind of got us through. So life is good. You know, you have to think positive. And, you know, we have our problems. We have our ups and downs like any other house. You know, sometimes, you know, you got to take the dog to the vet and you got to do things. You got to go see the doctor now that we're getting older. And you're like, "Ay, why does it hurt here? Aquí te duele. Ay, me levanto bien." You know, you can't party as hard as you used to, you know,
You
at
can't
all.
do the 3-day parties.
No, not even the 1-day party sometimes, you know, sometimes. So, but life is great if you keep a positive mental attitude and you keep looking forward. And if you try to find some things that you like to do. I was very successful in the car business. We were one of the most successful used car dealer in the Valley in South Texas as far as numbers and volume and profit goes when I was working for that company. And so we're real proud of that. But that taught me also that you just have to be competitive, you have to work hard, and you have to follow your dreams. You have to try to be successful at what you're good at. Cooking taught me that I was good at something. And I can't sing, I can't dance. There's a lot of things I'm not good at. But I'm not a techie person. It might look like I am because we're on posting videos, but I have a family that helps me with that, you know. But you just keep going. So I say life is good, you know. And as the old saying says, you know, if life gives you lemons, you make guacamole and limonada and salsa, and you squeeze it on your tacos.
There we go.
You know, you just
life is a good limon.
Yes.
Well, you guys, that has been another wonderful episode of the Accordion to Me podcast. I am your host, Veronique Medrano, and as always, puro amor, puro besos, puro carne asada.
Yeah,
Bye.
buddy. Love it.
Thank you for listening to Accordion to Me. The team behind this week's episode includes mixing and editing by Juan Pablo Diaz, theme music by Rodrigo Montalvo, produced by Javi G from MD Media. In-person recordings were done at the Podify Studios and remotely through Riverside FM. Accordion to Me is distributed through Anchor, and you can stream Accordion to Me wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm your host and executive producer, Veronique Medrano. Puro amor, puro besos, puro Tex-Mex.